Mr. President, Abraham Lincoln, when he opened up the Gettysburg Address, said, "Few will little note nor long remember what is said here today." As I rise, as the Super Bowl is about to begin, I realize that most people are looking for a view of Taylor Swift and not listening to us. But nonetheless, I feel compelled to come because we are obviously considering important issues. As we know, we're currently discussing a national security bill that would assist Israel after the October 7th attack and resist the efforts of Putin and the Chinese Communist Party. But this issue, importantly, has become entwined with border security, or U.S. border security. Now, as the way things work, and we all know this in the chamber, but just to specify, if any bill is going to be signed into law, it's because you have good policy, you have good politics, and it has good process. And if you don't have those three things on a big bill, then something's not going through. And I'd like to talk about that policy, politics, process dynamic here, and how the process is being used to defeat the passage of good policy. Now, by the way, it's that process which confuses folks, but I'll get to that. Let me just first discuss a little bit of the policy. I'm speaking as a Republican, a conservative Republican, and I can say that almost all Republicans want to confront the Chinese Communist Party. We understand around the world the Chinese Communist Party is doing its best to undermine the interests of the United States, turning a blind eye as fentanyl is imported into our country with 60 to 100,000 people in any given year dying from overdoses. We understand that the Chinese Communist Party takes our industry, subsidizes theirs. With that industry that moves over there, they take our jobs. And then they pollute the atmosphere and it blows over to the United States. This is a geopolitical rival. And Chinese Communist Party has turned their eyes upon Taiwan. Most Republicans, all Republicans, want to confront China, or so they say. Most Republicans want to keep Vladimir Putin from killing Americans. We understand he's trying to kill Americans. If anybody watching now or later wants to dispute that fact, just Google Wagner Group. Wagner Group, that group of Russians, the military group, attacking U.S. soldiers in the Middle East. You go there, you're going to find an article. You can find a radio transcript of them attacking our troops. We slaughtered them. That's not the point. They intended to slaughter us. Russian troops attacked Americans. Russians are in Venezuela. In Venezuela, they've helped that become a narco state in which drugs are being imported to the United States. And Russian troops are trying to hurt us around the world. Most Republicans, if not all, say that they are against that. And then lastly, let's just talk briefly about support of Israel. Republicans support Israel. And after October the 7th, in which unprovoked, Hamas went in with those atrocities, killing pregnant women, slaughtering infants, killing the elderly, not going after combatants, not going after the Israeli Defense Force, but going after Israelis at a peace concert, at a kibbutz, where a group of Israelis lived who were committed to reconciliation with Palestine. That kibbutz was specifically targeted. Republicans say we support Israel. In fact, it's hard for a Republican not to support the three things I just listed. So we have a policy before us which accomplishes that. It's not perfect. No bill comes through here that's perfect. Anybody can come up here with a laundry list of any bill, and you can cherry pick and find something that's bad with it. That's just the biggest game in town around here. But the point is that it overall accomplishes the goals that we wish to accomplish if you want to keep Russians from killing Americans, push back on the CCP, and support our ally Israel. Now, can we do more? Absolutely. There is a mess at the southern border. One of my colleagues, Lindsey Graham, spoke earlier about a hole in the fence that the U.S. doesn't fix, like the Biden administration doesn't fix, and 60 Minutes had a documentary of them just pouring through this four-foot wide hole. So we know there is a mess at the southern border. So wouldn't it be great if we could put an amendment on this good policy to support our allies that would likewise control the southern border? Now, the politics of controlling the border are really good. Republicans want to control the southern border. The politics of supporting Israel, by and large, are good on the Republican side. But the politics maybe are not as good. And there's some who, frankly, are not sure they want to support Israel. They don't think they really want to combat Putin, and they're not sure they want to support Taiwan. But they don't really want to say that. So instead, they say, well, there's nothing in there about the southern border, and so I'm not going to support this particular legislation. That makes the politics work out. I'm being principled, by golly. It doesn't support the southern border. It doesn't stop those illegals coming across, so therefore I'm going to tank the whole bill. That politics kind of works for you. So our policy is good on supporting our allies. We'd like to have better policy to support the southern border, but the politics of not supporting our allies are lousy. So if you don't want to support our allies, you just say that you don't have anything about the southern border, and so therefore you're not going to support our allies. It's getting a little confusing. I apologize. But the people who are trying to execute this are relying upon that confusion. Now, how would you go about doing this? If you don't want the bad politics of not supporting Israel, and you'd like to have better policy, but wait a second, if you get the better policy, then you have to support Israel and confront Ukraine and China, you use the process. Remember, we have to have policy, politics, and process. This is where the use of process comes in to give you cover on the politics as you work to defeat good policy. Now, again, all those folks back home reaching for the Doritos, looking for Taylor Swift on TV, or getting tired of seeing Taylor Swift on TV, they're saying process, process. What's process? Well, anyone who's going to a PTA meeting, a school board meeting, any sort of meeting, has seen process at work. There's an agenda. If you want to be heard, you raise your hand, maybe you get on a list. No one person or one group's allowed to dominate, theoretically, but all get to contribute. And in that mutual contribution, you come up with a product that is actually better for the whole. That's the way process is supposed to work. It works whether you're at a PTA meeting, a school board meeting, or in the United States Senate. But that process can be misused. And frankly, anyone who's been to a PTA meeting kind of knows it can be misused. So how could the process be misused in this set of circumstances? Well, remember, the only way we make this bill better is if we're allowed to put an amendment that controls the situation at the southern border. But if you use the process to prevent an amendment from being placed, you never get that amendment. You never improve the policy. You never allow something good to happen to control the influx of illegal immigrants across the southern border. And because you never get that amendment, your excuse of voting against the policy to support Israel, confronting Putin and the CCP, is airtight, because somehow it doesn't address the problem at the southern border. But wait a second. You can only do that with an amendment, and the process is being used to prevent that amendment from being placed. Now, if it seems like things are going back and forth, that's kind of the intent. How do we confuse the American people? How do I keep my politics straight? Because I want my politics to support my allies, but I really don't want to support them. I don't want to say that verbally, but I don't want to support them. I don't want to confront Putin. And the way I do it is to prevent an amendment, but I can't say that I'm preventing an amendment, so I just have to use the process to prevent the amendment. My children and I used to play a game called Opposite Day. They were young, and of course, at some point, they got pretty old with the game. But they would say, something like, Daddy, I want ice cream. And I'd say, well, today is opposite day. You don't get ice cream if you want it. Well, I don't want ice cream. Well, opposite day's off. You get ice cream after all. It would be kind of this kind of going back and forth before I'd finally buy them the ice cream. It's kind of like what's happening here. People are saying they don't want something, or saying they want something when all their actions show that they don't. The actions are opposite of that which they hope to achieve, but indeed they're achieving what they actually want. But that's kind of, I won't go any further with opposite day. It is using the process of preventing an amendment from being placed, but placing the amendment would therefore remove the obstacle to passing the policy which they really are opposed to. So, let's quickly review. If you don't want to support Israel, if you don't want to confront Putin, if you don't want to confront the Chinese Communist Party, and you'd rather block the support, this bill from supporting them by saying there's nothing to control the southern border, but you prevent an amendment from being passed that would control the southern border, then your politics are straight. Am I frustrated? I'm incredibly frustrated. I am frustrated because I feel like this is a fundamental dishonesty with the American people. By the way, I am for the policy of controlling the southern border. There are drugs and people coming across that border, and I want an amendment process whereby we can make it tougher and harder for those cartels to ship those folks. Give us an ability to have that amendment. But I also want to support Israel, confront Putin, and I also want to keep the CCP from taking Taiwan, for many reasons I could go into. Now, by the way, I may be wrong. I may be totally wrong, in which case I'm going to owe an apology to some folks. But if all of a sudden it breaks up, we can have an amendment that maybe will make it just a little bit harder for a cartel to traffic people and to traffic drugs, I'll be so pleased. I'll be so pleased that I was wrong. But on this day, when folks are hopefully thinking about the Super Bowl and more pleasant things, I cannot but say that we in the Senate owe it to the American people to both be honest to them and get something done. And this is my plea to my colleagues. Let's be honest and let's get something done. With that, I yield.